Welcome back to Time with God series, Joyce Meyer's Everyday Life Bible Journey for busy moms, busy people. Thank you for being here. My name is WendyMichelle Thompson, and we are picking up in Leviticus chapter 13. It's a little long, so make sure you have your cup of coffee, your cup of tea. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when a man has a swelling on his skin, a scab or a bright spot, and it becomes the disease of leprosy in the skin, then he shall be brought to the priest, to Aaron or one of his sons. The priest shall look at the diseased spot on his skin, and if the hair in it has turned white, and the disease appears depressed and deeper than his skin, it is a leprous disease, and the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot is white on his skin, not depressed, and the hair on it not turned white, the priest shall quarantine the person or bind up the spot for 7 days. Verse 5. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day, and if the disease in his estimation is at a standstill and has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall quarantine the person or bind up the spot 7 more days. And the priest shall examine him again the 7th day. And if the diseased part has a more normal color and the disease has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It only an eruption or a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the eruption or scab spreads farther in the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again. If the priest sees that the eruption or scab is spreading in the skin, then he shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy, which was a huge problem back then. When the disease of leprosy is in a man, he shall be brought to the priest. Verse 10. And the priest shall examine him, and if there is a white swelling in the skin and the hair on it has turned white, and there is a quick raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprosy in the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not bind the spot up, for he is unclean. And chronic means ongoing. But if, supposed, leprosy breaks out in the skin, and it covers all the skin of him who has the disease from head to foot, wherever the priest looks, the priest shall examine him. If the supposed leprosy covers all his body, he shall pronounce him clean of the disease. It is all turned white, and he is clean. But when the raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean. Verse 15. And the priest shall examine the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. For the raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. But if the raw flesh turns again and becomes white, he shall come to the priest. And the priest shall examine him, and if the diseased part is turned to white again, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, who had the disease. He is clean. And when there is in the skin of the body the scar of a boil that is healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, and it is shown to the priest, verse 20, and if when the priest examines it, it looks lower than the skin, and the hair on it is turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the disease of leprosy. It has broken out in the boil. But if the priest examines it and finds no white hair in it, and it is not lower than the skin, but appears darker, then the priest shall bind it up for 7 days. If it spreads in the skin, he shall pronounce him unclean. It is diseased. But if the bright spot does not spread, it is the scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if there is any flesh in the skin, of which there is a burn by fire, and the quick flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish white or white, verse 25, then the priest shall examine it. And if the hair in the bright spot is turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin, it is leprosy broken out in the burn. Therefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the disease of leprosy. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it is not lower than the rest of the skin, but it is darker, then the priest shall bind it up for 7 days. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day. If it is spreading in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. But if the bright spot has not spread, but it is darker, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar of the burn. When a man or woman has a disease upon the head or in the beard, verse 30, the priest shall examine the diseased place. If it appears to be deeper than the skin, with yellow thin hair in it, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a mange-like leprosy of the head or beard. I tell you what, I feel like I need to be taking nursing notes on this. This is crazy because there is just a lot of differentiation upon what is considered clean, unclean, and so forth. These priests were very much anointed, not only to speak on behalf of God, but to have medical knowledge, which I just find amazing. Verse 30, the priest shall examine the diseased place. If it appears to be deeper than the skin, with yellow thin hair in it, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a mange-like leprosy of the head or beard. If the priest examines the spot infected by the mange-like disease, and it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the priest shall bind up the spot for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine the diseased spot. If the mange has not spread and has no yellow hair in it, and does not look deeper than the skin, then the patient shall be shaved, except the mange-like spot, and the priest shall bind up the spot 7 days more. And on the 7th day, the priest shall look at the mange-like spot. If the mange has not spread and looks no deeper than the skin, he shall pronounce the patient clean. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. Verse 35. But if the mange-like spot spreads in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him. And if the mange-like spot is spread in the skin, the priest need not look for the yellow hair. The patient is unclean. But in his estimation, the mange is at a standstill and has black hair in it. The mange-like disease is healed. He is clean. The priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or woman has on the skin bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and if the bright spots in the skin are a dull white, it is a harmless eruption. He is clean. Verse 40. If a man's hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, but he is clean. So all you bald guys out there, know that you are clean. And if his hair has fallen out from the front of his head, he has baldness of the forehead, but he is clean. But if there is on the bald head or forehead a reddish white disease spot, it is leprosy breaking out on his baldness. Then the priest shall examine him, and if the disease swelling is reddish white on his bald head or forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the body, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His disease is on his head. Verse 45, and the leper's clothes shall be rent, and the hair of his head shall hang loose, and he shall cover his upper lip and cry, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as the disease is in him. He is unclean. He shall live alone, and his dwelling shall be outside the camp. The garment also that the disease of leprosy, which is symbolic of sin, is in, whether a wool or a linen garment, whether it be woven or knitted stuff, or in the warp or woof of linen, or of wool, or in a skin of anything made of skin. If the disease is greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warp or woof, or in anything made of skin, it is the plague of leprosy. Show it to the priest. Anything green or red, I would think so. I would definitely have that checked out for sure. Verse 50, the priest shall examine the diseased article and shut it up for 7 days. He shall examine the disease on the seventh day. If it is spread in the garment or in the article, whatever service it may be used for, the disease is a rotting or corroding leprosy. It is unclean. He shall burn the garment, whether diseased in warp or woof, in wool or linen, or anything made of skin, for it is a rotting or corroding leprosy to be burned in the fire. But if the priest finds the disease has not spread in the garment, in the warp or the woof, or in anything made of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing in which the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. Verse 55. And the priest shall examine the diseased article after it has been washed, and if the diseased portion has not changed color, though the disease has not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire. It is a rotting or corroding disease, whether the leprous spot be inside or outside. If the priest looks and the diseased portion is less noticeable after it is washed, he shall tear it out of the garment or the skin, leather, or out of the warp or woof. If it appears still in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything made of skin, it is spreading. You shall burn the diseased part with fire. But the garment or the woven or knitted stuff or warp or woof or anything made of skin from which the disease departs when you have washed it, it shall then be washed a second time and be clean. This is the law for a leprous disease and a garment of wool or linen, whether in the warp or woof or in anything made of skin, to pronounce it clean or unclean. Wow. Wow. That is a lot to take in. Like I said, I felt like I was in nursing school, and I have read through the Bible several times, but I don't think I've read through Leviticus since I became an RN. Just verses here and there with Bible studies. So I find this incredibly interesting right now. We'll probably do a big study on it. That concludes Leviticus chapter 13. God bless your day and all your tomorrows.